Hey, what's up? It's Chris the Drone Geek, and we're here just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I thought today'd be a great day to experiment and review the GemFan Vanover FPV.
Chris, do you know any good spots to fly drones around here?
Holy shit, it's Billy Kyle. What drone's that?
The new Inspire 3.
We're reviewing that thing. What's up? It's Chris the Drone Geek here with the one, the only Billy Kyle and the DJI Inspire 3. Just outside of Pittsburgh.
Yes, they're here for that, not me. I can leave, right?
I mean, yeah, you can leave. Hey, yeah, you can leave. No, we're just outside of Pittsburgh. We just got done with Aerium, the Aerium Summit, and you know, Billy's got this just beautiful specimen of a drone. We figured, why not come out and fly it? Tell me a little bit about this thing in terms of how the setup goes and everything like that.
Yeah, so honestly, the setup isn't too bad. The big case pretty much takes up the entire trunk. Personally, I really like the case because it fits everything you need. 12 total batteries for 6 total flights, 2 charging hubs, 2 controllers, the camera, all 4 lenses. So you can fit everything you immediately need for the drone inside of the case. From there, if you have batteries in already, it's a matter of taking the drone out, putting it into its landing mode so that the legs come down, attaching the camera, the propellers, and then you're good. You just turn the drone on and go from there. So, you know, obviously a Mavic is a lot more portable, but if you just take the extra 45 seconds to set up a drone like this, you're gonna get much better images.
And speaking of better images, we were out last night flying the city of Pittsburgh, and the images on this thing are absolutely insane. I mean, the camera on this, it's 8K, correct?
Yeah, so it'll shoot 8K, ProRes RAW. Last night was actually my first time shooting ProRes RAW with it, and it's kind of a completely different workflow, but again, like, you know, the hardware itself kind of combined with the software gives you just one of the best pictures that you can get in an aerial platform, bar none.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, the low light performance, the full frame sensor, everything about the X9 on this is just, it's out of this world. I can't even talk about it without starting to stutter and lock up.
I know, so you know, you look at their kind of glow up from the X4 to the X5 to the X7 to now the X9, and it's always a big jump in hardware, but also it's the dynamic range, it's the frame rate, right? It's the resolution that you can shoot, it's the ability to use, you know, their DL mount, all the different lenses. So this really is a highly advanced camera system. And just to kind of get a little bit too far into the weeds probably here, something like this is great because it's all that you need in a camera, and it's not like the AirPeak where you're trying to carry a full-on Sony camera that has a lot of the hardware you don't need. So something like this not only gives you the ability to shoot ProRes RAW right out of the gate, but also gives you everything you need in just the camera housing.
Yeah, and the one thing I want to talk about before we maybe, you know, take this up in the air is the SSD in this situation up there. Tell us a little bit about how all that works together.
Yeah, so what's great is you have the, you know, onboard SSD. When shooting ProRes RAW, you can fit like 35 minutes on 1 terabyte. So this is the SSD here, and what people will like to hear is that the SSD is USB-C, so you don't need a reader, you don't need to worry about bringing that extra piece of hardware. You can just plug this right into your computer and just offload the footage like that. And you know, I think to dump the full terabyte, it was like 18 minutes. So super fast here. And again, having USB-C is great because you don't need any sort of like adapter or hub.
That's solid, and it makes workflow a lot easier. I know one big complaint with people that flew the Inspire 2 is that SSD, you needed some sort of an adapter, some sort of reader to be able to get the footage off of it. Now they've got an integrated USB that allows you to just plug and play.
It's great, it's awesome.
Now, one more question before we do get into the actual flight characteristics and the performance of this thing. Tell us a little bit about the RC.
Yeah, so the controller's great. I mean, I had a lot of experience using this with the M30, and you know, the M30 is a different beast because you're kind of using that for search and rescue, so it's just, you're very tactile, right? It's like just point the drone, try to get as much data as you can, whereas this, you want to be very meticulous with your flight. So I had to get kind of geared into using the controller, and this little thing that they included on here is great because you can mount on a lanyard, like a full-on harness if you wanted to, but you actually just rest this right up against your stomach and just fly like this, and it's so comfortable. It takes a lot of the weight off of the actual controller itself, lets you pinch, lets you do whatever you want. So this is a nice little built-in feature, and the screen is great, the battery life is great. You know, it has the it's got the extra battery there in the back, so you've got the internal and external battery, and if you're on a long day of shooting, you can just continue to feed this batteries and be totally fine.
That's perfect. I don't think we need to wait any longer. I'm excited, I know you're excited. Let's fly this thing, let's fly it. All right, so Billy was nice enough to trust us with the Inspire 3. We're gonna go ahead and take it for a flight. I can't even tell you how exciting this is just to have something like this in the air. So we'll go ahead and let's head out over to the bridge, so put the Sundora back. Now, both watching Billy as well as like my first experience flying this myself, the controls are super smooth. I mean, everything just seems to flow together It flies just how you'd expect something like this to fly. And the image quality on the screen, I gotta say, is stellar. This remote controller is, bar none, maybe one of the best I've ever seen. It is a little awkward in my hands, I will say that. But the belly rest helps a lot. And like I said, the screen, the brightness, the quality, everything about it just screams like high-end professional Hollywood cinema. So we'll go ahead and we'll take it down the river here. Just take a look at all the cars going across the Blue Bridge here. Like I said, we are outside the city of Pittsburgh. And, you know, the first thing I'm noticing is in normal mode, this thing just zips. And that just all plays into the flight characteristics. I can't even describe how smooth this feels, especially for something this large. It's just incredible. So let's go ahead, let's turn it. Don't want to fly over the bridge with all the cars. And you know, after seeing some of the footage and some of the photos Billy took last night while we were in Pittsburgh, and again, looking at some of the stuff we're shooting here, the quality on this camera, that full frame sensor, the upgrade from the X7 on the X9, having that full frame sensor really just allows a lot of light in and expands that image so you get a lot more detail. You can crop in, you've got a lot more variability in how you can use these images. It's just, I'm in awe. I mean, it's sort of hard to even sit here and talk about it because it's just so cool. Now, if you prefer, and I don't know a lot of people that would prefer doing it this way on a camera that's got a stabilized gimbal, especially one as nice as the X9, you can switch over on this drone. It does have the FPV camera on it, so you are able to switch over. And I believe, Billy, if I'm correct, that's the same system that they use on the Avata. It's sort of like the O3 Air unit, correct?
Yeah, so I mean, that FPV camera is really good for like the person that is piloting the drone, because remember, like I could jump in there with a second controller and control the gimbal. So if someone's controlling just the drone, they can use the FPV camera, fly straight ahead, and the person controlling the camera can look anywhere they want underneath.
Yeah, and that's something we won't do here on this video review, but I do want to talk about it just quickly, is the dual op mode. They do send in some packages a double controller package. So you're able to have somebody flying the drone as well as somebody that's actually operating the camera independently. And Billy, you were telling me a little bit about the nuance of that and how you control the camera with that second controller. A lot of people are used to using their gimbal wheels and their adjustments. How do you do it with that second controller?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways that you can customize the controls, but you can like literally use the sticks to actually control the camera. So just like you'd be flying the drone, you're using that to control the gimbal and move it all around. The one issue, in my opinion, with the Inspire 3 is that it can't spin around a full 360 degrees. In fact, the way that it gets around that is doing a quick spin feature. So if you want to go all the way around 360 degrees, the drone itself whips around in a complete circle to unlock the gimbal and let you keep spinning it, which is a little bit scary. Oh, yeah. But I have that feature turned off because typically I'm flying solo, so I'll move the drone any way I need to, like a typical, say, Mavic, but still, it's cool to be able to have that second operator, you know, on a much larger production where the camera movements might be more demanding.
Yeah, and that's something to keep in mind is, you know, if you're thinking about like that dual op and maybe that intimidates you a little bit, honestly, the way this camera handles, the combination of just how easy it is to use this controller and then the ease of use of the DJI ecosystem, which we all pretty much know and love, you really don't need that. Again, it would be like on a larger Hollywood set or a larger production set that you might consider having a dual op, somebody operating the camera and somebody operating the drone, but it's easy enough that you can do this on your own with little to no assistance.
And something that could be great about that too is if you're working with a client, you could give them that second controller just to literally monitor the footage that you're capturing. So they could always be seeing the framing at all times, which is...
And there's a lot of value in that too. And not even that, but you know, your VO needs to be seeing the drone while you're flying if you do need a VO, but if you do have a second person there acting as a VO and the drone is within line of sight, your VO can actually act as like a quality control when you're filming. They can take a look at the feed and see how it looks as well. So we're just gonna we'll do one more lap here. Now, the one thing I did notice while we're flying, and you'll see up in the upper right-hand corner, is the battery life. Now, I don't have it to the floor. It's going at a nice little clip here. We're about 21 miles an hour in normal mode, but I have noticed the battery drain is pretty significant. What's your average flight time, Billy, when you're flying this thing?
Yeah, man, like 17 minutes. I mean, you remember, we were flying last night and I was constantly cycling batteries. And you know, you're flying in normal right now. Imagine buzzing around in sport mode. You're gonna kill that battery pretty quick.
Well, let's take a look at that actually. I'm gonna go ahead and let the drone just rest in the air for a second. I'll switch over to sport mode. Yeah, and let's see how it does. Let it rip. All right, I'm gonna push it to the floor here. And we are up to 42, 45, 46, 48, 50. This thing whips, and it's actually going into the wind slightly. It's at 55 and we're going into the wind. That's impressive. That's
Yeah,
got a lot of power.
It doesn't care, man. It'll just rip right through.
But again, you know, just as Billy said, just as I'm sort of noticing here up in the upper right-hand corner, before we switched into sport mode, we were at about 72, 73%. We're already down to 64%, 65% on these batteries. And speaking of the batteries and the swapping, because you did swap batteries a lot last night while we were in the city of Pittsburgh, tell us a little bit about the hot swap and how that works.
Yeah, so it's really nice because you have two separate clips now. The old Inspire 2 design was this weird circular button on the top that made it difficult to hot swap them, but now you have a single clip on each battery. If you've got batteries at the ready, you can be on the ground for no less than 10 seconds and then be right back up in the air. So you take one battery out, replace with a full one, and then vice versa. And you know, I've seen these larger productions where they might be live streaming and they have multiple drones going. They'll land and have someone waiting with two batteries. So once the drone lands, they swap it. There's somebody completely separate, like not even the pilot, swaps the batteries, and then they're right back in the air. So it's really a helpful feature to kind of speed up the process of putting new batteries in. You don't have to wait for the GPS to connect and all of that stuff.
Absolutely. Now, you know, we talked a little bit about the batteries, the hot swapping. There's another part of this drone that you can actually swap on and off. Aside from the gimbal, we'll get a little more specific with the lens. One of the things that we were talking about is the focal length on this lens. The one that DJI sent Billy, and I know that they have other ones available, but the one they sent Billy was what, a 14 millimeter?
So it's 18 millimeters.
18 millimeter, okay.
And I don't know if you can notice it, but it's the widest lens I've used on a drone. It's like, it's way wide.
Compared to my Mavic 3, it's, yeah, you can tell this has a much wider field of view.
Yeah.
And you know, that's not always a good thing. And you were sort of talking a little bit about that in terms of, you know, how it looks on a drone. And it is a matter of opinion. It's a little bit more subjective than it is objective. But you know, tell us your philosophy on that focal length and how important that is.
Yeah, I mean, 18 millimeters is good for those establishing shots, but if you want to get into, you know, some sort of shot where you're doing a reveal and you want to, you know, tightly focus on a building, 18 millimeters is just going to be way too wide. So that's why it's nice to have the ability to swap lenses, but when you're, you know, only dealing with one lens, you've got to make it work with what you've got.
Oh, absolutely. And you can. I mean, again, this is a DJI product and it's an Inspire with a full frame sensor now. So you have a lot of flexibility in what you shoot and how you shoot it. But you do have to, you know, recognize that how camera equipment works. It's not just a straightforward thing like your Minis, like your Airs, like your Mavics. This is a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more complex in how you set it up. So, but again, I really love the image. The field of view is a little wide for my liking, I think, but it's not anything that I would say ruins the integrity of the camera. It's actually pretty fantastic.
What do you think of the range and I guess just the overall signal? You
know, I'm impressed. We had to drop down to about 2 bars when we went on the other side of this big furnace building.
This is a big metal building.
These are old blast furnace. I think, what do they call it? The Rachel? Is it the Rachel's blast furnace?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember. I'll put it up on the video here in case you're in the area and you ever want to come and fly. It's a really nice location, but again, this is a big metal building and we put that between us and the Inspire 3. So we did lose a little bit of signal integrity, but nothing that really scared me. And again, it's a DJI product. It's got a nice ecosystem, a lot of safety features on it that keep me from really panicking. I know this thing's gonna just return to home if I do drop signal.
Yeah, and that's, in my opinion, one of the biggest upgrades from the Inspire 2, which uses Lightbridge 2. I mean, we're talking like, there's been 3 iterations of transmission system from DJI between Lightbridge 2 and what's in this, which is OcuSync 3. I mean, huge upgrade.
Yeah, I can't say I have any complaints in terms of how this thing handles the connection, the connectivity, and of course the controller itself. Now the one thing that I am finding a little bit hard as I fly is to remember to use that belly bar to take some of the weight off of the controller. It's awesome, but you know, if you don't remember to use it, it's one of those deals. And I'm a little high, so I'm gonna bring it down. There we go. If you don't remember to use it, you are bearing the full weight of the controller, which isn't super heavy, but it's definitely not like your regular DJI RCN1 or even your RC Pro. So I'm gonna bring it down here. We are at about 42, 41% on these batteries. So I'm gonna bring it in a little closer. We'll do a tight shot here on the furnace, see what's going on down through here, and then we'll land it, because the landing is something important that I think I wanna talk about, especially for anybody that is not a previous Inspire owner. You're thinking about upgrading to something a little more heavy duty, and the Inspire 3 is on your radar. Something important to know when you do land this thing. So we'll bring this over.
So I know that Chris didn't know this, but a police officer just circled behind
us.
Did he? I thought he was gonna stop and have some words with us, but he kept going.
All right, so we'll bring this down. Here it comes over us.
It's not that loud either.
No, I was actually really impressed with how quiet this thing is. Now, when it's in the microphone, obviously it's gonna make me sound like crap, but in an environmental standpoint, it's not loud at all. So go ahead. Now, the important thing to know here, and you can't see it, but I'm just gonna tell you, there's an R1 button that Billy has programmed on the controller that actually sets the landing gear down. So we're gonna press that now. And that's gonna lower the landing gear. And you had a bad experience with your Inspire too.
Yeah, I landed on the camera a
Yeah,
couple
you
times.
gotta make sure you remember to press that button, otherwise it could be a really expensive mistake. So go ahead and put this thing down. And it lands just like any other DJI drone. You bring it down and just hold, and the flight is complete. By far, Billy, honestly, one of the most favorite flights I've ever been on. I know it was short, but man, this thing is just an absolute powerhouse.
It makes it hard to want to fly anything else, really, you know?
It really does. And you know, I experienced this when I switched to didn't switch, but when I included FPV and learned how to fly manual, I thought, I'll never fly my Mavic again. This is way too much fun. Now I'm all of a sudden I'm back again. I'm like, yeah, no, this is cool.
No, I mean, this has a time and place though, right? I mean, of course it's their top of the line, best of the best, but you're not gonna be bringing this on like an everyday real estate shoot or an everyday construction shoot, because the flight time's a big risk, or not, I wouldn't say risk, but a big issue in that regard, because you're gonna get such better longevity out of, say, a Mavic 3, because you can do multiple homes with one battery, whereas with this, you might get one home because of its battery life. So there's a time and a place for all these different drones, which is why you have this ecosystem of so many different options.
Absolutely, and you know, the other thing is portability. Now, this is super convenient. The way that it flattens out and fits into the case is awesome how that works. And the case itself is pretty low profile, all things considered, but it's still a pretty large format drone. So if you're a weekend warrior, you like to travel, especially airline travel, this may not be like an ideal solution for you. But you know, that's where the Mavics come in, that's where the Airs come in, that's where all those things come in. Now, wrapping up my experience, your experience with the Inspire 3, I gotta tell you, like, there are a few things I really loved about this drone. First and foremost, the flight performance is out of this world. It's absolutely outstanding. It just does so well, it handles so well. It's like a sport car for drones, but it's built like a Mack truck. What are your thoughts on it?
No, look, I think you described it pretty well, because like when you get the drone in the air, it just feels so nimble. You know, you feel like you almost have like the power to do anything that you want using this drone with its full suite of sensors all the way around, the omnidirectional optical avoidance. That's great on a drone of this price point. You know, the camera, of course, is really why we fly these drones. So having the best of the best on there is awesome. Something that I personally really enjoy is the speed of the drone. I mean, you can go up and down so quick with it. So, I mean, really, there's a lot to love about it, but like you mentioned, if you're a weekend warrior, it might not be for you on the price point side, but also on the form factor side. So
yeah, and I do want to touch on that real quick. This package in particular was about $16,000, is that correct?
Yeah, so $16,500 gets you in the door, but that gets you like everything you need: camera, drone, 6 total batteries, so 3 sets of batteries, 1 controller, you've got the case. So I mean, really, that's a good kit right there. And then from there, you're going to spend probably a couple $1,000 more on more batteries, maybe another case if you wanted to go with something different. So there's so many accessories you can buy for this thing.
And let's talk about the batteries, because when you look at that $16,000 and you get the 6 batteries with it, the flight time is maybe one of the largest negative marks on this thing for me. 17 minutes. It's a little disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you're on set, you might, which this drone will be on set, right? I mean, you might be in the air trying to get the shot a couple of different times, and there's going to be a time where you need to brake, but that's why those hot swapping batteries are so important, because, you know, if you're working with a second operator and you and I are on set, right, it'll be easy for me to land the drone down, you're ready, you're the gimbal operator, right? You're going to swap it in and out, and then I'm up and I'm getting set up while you're getting the remote ready for that next shot. So the hot swappable batteries definitely do make it a little bit better, but yeah, the flight time is something that I wish was a little bit better.
And if you go ahead and factor in that hot swap, and if you do have a second operator that can go in and make the most out of your time when swapping those batteries, in total with 6 batteries, you're gonna get about a little less than an hour of flight time, which is still really, really good. Yeah. So now, in terms of the negatives, that's really the only thing other than like the footprint. But yes, you know, when you purchase an Inspire, you know what you're getting though. Yes, yeah. But the real positive here, and the thing that I want to end this review on, is the camera. It was absolutely incredible today. It was absolutely incredible last night. That full frame sensor took the Inspire 2, and when they transitioned to the Inspire 3, that X9 camera with the full frame sensor just absolutely blew it out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we had this big of a drone, is to carry that big of a camera. And you know, it's funny, like we kind of look at the different sensor sizes throughout DJI's lineup, and the Mavic 3 has a 4/3 sensor, which is kind of like their next step up from that regard. And people are always talking about like, hey, you know, I wonder if they'll put a full frame sensor on a drone of that size. But look at the size of this camera.
That's,
you know,
I
mean,
too big.
This camera is huge. The only way they might be able to fit a camera of this size on a smaller drone, like maybe even a Phantom, is if they ditch the swappable lenses, right? That whole whole housing that you can put new lenses on and off, and maybe if they kind of make it one integrated system. But still, man, the reason you're flying a drone like this is to carry that full frame sensor. So like you said, camera is so important.
It is. And you know, with that full frame sensor, you know, we talked a lot about the performance today. The low light performance is absolutely incredible. You got some great shots, and I encourage you to check out Billy's Instagram, check out his YouTube. He's gonna have some great clips in his reviews and some of his content of that low light performance. It's the best I've ever seen on a drone.
Yeah, it's great. I'm addicted to flying at nighttime because of that reason.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. Well, all in all, I mean, it's really hard to give this a score because I feel like I'm gonna give it too high of a score, be too generous, but I usually break them down by category. Since we're out in the field, we've got Billy as our guest appearance here on this review. I'm not gonna break it down by category, I'm just gonna give it one total score. Out of 10 points, this drone, for me, scores a 9.3. Absolutely fantastic. It lost some points on the flight time, but overall, when you consider that the base package includes 6 batteries, and that equals out to roughly an hour of flight time, it sort of makes up for it.
Yeah, totally agree.
So, Billy, thank you so much, man. I'm so glad you ran into us out here.
Yeah,
and this beats the heck out of a Gem Fan review. Check out Billy Kyle on YouTube. Check out Billy Kyle on YouTube. I'm gonna have links for Billy, all of Billy's social media down below in the description of this video. If you liked this video, give us a thumbs up. Helps us out a lot, gets us out into the algorithm. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button as well. This channel is all about drone pilots and drones. We make content with drones, about drones, and for drone pilots. So I highly encourage you to subscribe and hit the bell icon too. You'll get a notification every time I post a new video. Now, I'm Chris, the Drone Geek. That's Billy Kyle. We are out of here. See ya.
Peace.
Yo, what you say? Steady screaming, YOLO, right?